People who worked in restaurants. What was the worst customer that you had to deal with? I worked in Domino's. I had a guy throw a handful of pennies at me while laughing. The 30 odd cents was my tip. He was mad when I turned around and walked away without picking any of them up. His exact words were, "Oh, my money not good enough for you? Fine. I'll never order Domino's again." I've never had a customer fire themselves like that before. It was great. Barista here. Had a guy that regularly came in and ordered a complicated drink. He always finished the order by asking for a refill in the drink. If you gave him a confused look, he would say, "Well, how else am I gonna taste you?" He was the worst. Oh god, I had a similar dude when I was in college. Said to me to stick my finger into the beer bottle so he could taste something sweet, mayo. Work in a place that is frequented by local families and youth sports teams. On Sundays this one large group of people always come in, and they are the worst. The parents drink and ignore their preteens who run around playing games in the entire restaurant, disrupting everyone else. They have tried to walk in a party of 45 during end of year sports party season when we are booked solid and get mad that there isn't enough space for them. And they modify everything like crazy and leave zero in a tip. It's at least once a month the entire group comes in, and weekly for some of the individual families. This is the reason many restaurants have an automatic gratuity on parties above a certain size. One large party can steal a server's entire evening, and having them not tip is painful. I used to work in a bar that sold very old booze. A drunk man tried to impress his friends by chugging from a bottle of Mero from the early 60s. He had to pay for the whole thing since his lips touched it, and it was useless. Cost him around $800. Link, this guy threw a beer in my face when I stuck up for myself and told him to stop banging his fist on the bar and screaming to get my attention. I had a guy literally spit on me for the same reason. I was working at one of the busiest bars in a major city in the Midwest, and this fuckstick can't stop pounding his empty glass on the bar, rolling his eyes and yelling, "I'm empty over here." It was 11 on a Saturday night and the bar was packed. Literal line around the block. I told him I would get to him as quickly as I could, and not 20 seconds later I hear him slamming one of my fucking glasses on the bar again. I lean over the bar to tell him if he can't stop abusing my glassware, I'm giving him a plastic cup. Douche canoe proceeds to spit in my fucking face. I was honestly shocked. One of my regulars grabbed him by the back of his head and slammed his face into the bar. Fight breaks out. At least 20 of my glasses ended up broken. Worked in a popular restaurant for a while. We usually have quite a long wait, 30-40 minutes waits during dinner service, and people are told by the hosts about this. There was this lady that got fed up with the wait after 10 minutes. She stormed into the restaurant, stood next to a table of 4 people and literally asked them, "Are you guys done? We've been waiting for a long time now and would like to have the table if you guys are just chatting." Was completely mind blown how people are able to not give a fuck and pull something like this in public. A homeless guy who came in, actively dripping of blood from his hands, and started screaming at me and threatening me because I wouldn't give him a bakery case item without him paying. He was dripping blood all over the counter and spitting everywhere until I threatened to call the cops. A huge group of clearly rich kids who came in, stole a bunch of drinks, and left the dining room trashed. A guy who *DEMANDED* I take money from our tip jar to help him pay for his order, and argued with me when I said no. People who would place large orders or even take home a cake and eat half of it, then flip their shit and demand a refund when they'd find out it was all vegan, even though that fact was well advertised. That first guy was a huge biohazard, and I absolutely would have called the cops and made my manager deal with him. Way back in the 80s I worked in a restaurant that was a favorite of a celebrity chef of those days, Jeff Smith, the frugal gourmet. Never seen a bigger shat than that guy. Literally make our servers cry. Nothing was ever right. He was beyond rude and condescending, yet he kept coming back. He had a reputation of being a jerk off camera. Eventually he was disgraced by being outed as a child predator and was quickly forgotten by all. Our restaurant was a good place. Another celebrity chef of the time Graham Kerr, the galloping gourmet, was always a pleasure to have visit. In his day, Graham Kerr had the energy level of Gordon Ramsay, the health consciousness of Paula Deen, and the gleeful euphoria of man well acquainted with ecstasy. He was fun to watch. After a wedding reception ended at our facility, we were cleaning, and I began the cleaning process on our espresso machine. The party was over almost a half hour already. The process takes 12 minutes. People were still there as the party slowly let out, and the father of the bride asks me for an espresso. I told him I could get it to him, as we have a strict policy of always trying to satisfy our guests' needs, but the machine was cleaning, and it would be done in about 10 minutes. He begins ranting about how much he paid for the wedding, and stormed to our banquets manager, and told them I refused to make it for him. Manager is at bag and starts ripping me in front of the guy. I show both of them that the machine is just finishing the cleaning process, and it was impossible to make it beforehand. I got suspended for 2 weeks. Oof. Hope you're out of there. Fuck both of those turds. Our bar was having a private party. A drunk dude walks in and orders a drink. I knew he wasn't with the party, based on his attire, and that he came in every so often. I told him I could not get him a drink. He lost his mind, told me to fuck off, and then wanted to fight me. On his way out he yelled that we should put up signs. As he walked by the signs on the door saying we were closed for a private event, he came in the next day sober and apologized. Hey, at least he apologized. A lady from the real estate agency next door ordered a chicken box, and then proceeded to drive an hour to her next showing. In the middle of summer, where it probably say right in front of her rack unit in the passenger seat. Surprise, surprise, food gets cold when left in the cold. Who knew? Upon the shocking discovery that food doesn't stay warm, she called us to scream at my boss that we tried to kill her. Because he's a spineless pushover in the summer, he agreed to give her a new free meal. When she came back, she came to get her free food, and things didn't improve. One of our chefs came to collect her cold food. While still in front of the window, he opened the box and fished out the uneaten biscuit. He threw the rest away, but walked away with the bread. I presume he meant to eat it, but he went about it all wrong. She started screaming about how we were recycling food, that she was good friends with the health inspector, that she was going to see us in court. The histrionics brought my boss out of his office, and after chewing out the idiot chef, he tried to smooth things over. I don't remember much, we were fuck all busy, and since he'd taken over the drive-thru, I hopped onto another task. She wouldn't move forward, and the line was piling up. My boss was starting to get annoyed. They had stopped talking to each other. Her hot fresh meal is up, and he goes to hand deliver it and tell her to get the fuck out of line. I'm not entirely sure, as I was halfway across the store trying to make drinks. All I remember is a surprised gasp from our food runner, and looking up to see a box of steaming hot chicken came sailing through the window and scatter across the front of the house. My boss had barely stepped back in time. We could only stare as the crazy lady roared out of the parking lot, and he snapped at the first person stupid enough to still be making eye contact to clean it up. Stupid enough to still be making eye contact. He. I like that. Fast food near a high school. The absolute worst were the moms. Had one who came in weekly and screamed about wrong orders or whatever complaint she could dream up, so she could get free food for her entire family. Then you get the loser douches who think harassing employees is funny. The absolute worst customer was the owner of the franchise. He'd walk in, employees and then fire someone for some issue, so minor it was likely just made up. I worked at a chain restaurant at one point, and our douche of a regional manager would come in and do this. He never had people fired, he would just grade you on our pushing of the new menu items and overall knowledge of the menu. It was super cringe inducing. I fucking hated that job. Had a man and his wife come in during a really busy lunch rush. He was rude off the bat, interrupting me, not wanting to listen to me speak, whatever, it happens all the time. He was very adamant that he wanted both chips and salsa and a plate of roasted wings as appetizers. He kept emphasizing that he wanted them together before they ordered their lunch. Even though chips and salsa only take a minute and wings take about 12, I rang them in together because of how he ordered them. In hindsight, I should have made completely sure, but Not 3 minutes later, the man is waving at my coworker across the restaurant, yelling at her about how Theo have been there for 30 minutes and his appetizer is taking too long, and he wants it before his wings. I was at a party table, so she ran back and grabbed the chips and the wings, which were somehow up as well, and brought them out. He took one bite of the wing and tossed the plate like a frisbee across the table towards her and started complaining about them being cold. I rush over to see what earth's going on, and he starts yelling at me, saying his food is awful and this is the worst service hell has ever gotten in his life. I don't do well with grown men yelling at me, so I went to the kitchen and my manager went out and thankfully had my back as much as he could and made the guy pay for the wings and the chips and then leave. After he left, I started to clean the table, where I found the single penny he tipped me with, that my coworker promptly threw in the trash, and got a call from my general manager asking why a man had called me a professionally on Yelp. Some people are just the worst, and make everyone else feel like shit no matter what. A customer ordered one of our daily specials and did not like it, so instead of complaining to me about the food and letting me offer something else, she complained to my manager about me. This was May of last year. In August of last year, turns out she was one of my college professors for the semester, teaching a management course. She recognized me the first day, but I played it off like I did not know her. Edit. She did not complain about me to my manager in front of me. I left to go work an event in a different building, and she left a sticky note for me after talking to my boss. I do not know what the sticky note said, since I did not bother to read it. I'll never understand why people make their dislike for a restaurant's food into a bizarre personal grudge against the server. I worked at a place that had good food except for this one dish, steak fries. It was a small hanger steak, cut into strips, served with fries. That's it. The steak was always tough, under-seasoned and wasn't a lot of food for the money. One day a guy asked me for some recommendations, so I made a couple. He apparently wasn't impressed by my suggestions, so he asked about the steak fries and said, explicitly, that I wouldn't recommend it, so that's what he ordered. After taking a couple of bites, he pushed the plate away, then asked me to call over the manager. He then complained to the manager, not directly about the food, but about me for giving him an awful recommendation. Bartending in a restaurant a few years ago, there was a private party, and one of the guests asked me to plug in his iPhone to listen to a song. No big deal. I did it, and he tipped me $20. He left his phone behind the bar and got wasted. When he was leaving I said, "Sir, don't forget about your phone." He threw a beer on me and told me to leave him the fuck alone, and told me get a real job. Guess who got to keep a nice new iPhone? We had someone do a runner once, and they left their phone. Reasonably expensive one, although this was over 10 years ago, so I cannot remember if they were as much as they are now. He sheepishly came back the next day asking if one had been handed in. Our boss said no, and kept the phone. I had a guy that was a germaphobe and had really bad OCD. He came through before, and my coworker didn't want to deal with him. So I went to the drive-through window after washing my hands. I cashed out the order that was on screen and he reluctantly handed over his card. I gave him the coffee that I cashed him out for. He started yelling at me saying that it was wrong. Apparently the person that took the order forgot to type it in. Unfortunate, but it happens. He started yelling at the coworker that didn't want to take his order at the window. So instead of just saying that it was the wrong order, getting refunded and being on his way, he stayed in the driveway for 20 minutes telling my coworker that she was stupid and unprofessional and was unfit to be a supervisor. He kept demanding that we get the phone number of our franchise owner, but apparently the number was wrong, and he kept yelling at us. But when we came back to the window after 20 minutes of this, he left. My supervisor went into the back to cry. I felt so bad for her. She's the sweet person. Fast forward less than a month later, he called the store to apologize, and the manager made sure that my coworker never dealt with him again. But he could come in, as long as he didn't make a scene. He told the manager that his therapist told him he should apologize. He spent a combined total of 3 hours on the phone with the manager, where he apologized and also blamed us for making him late to his appointment that day, and at the end of the phone call, he asked if we were hiring. But that last line, though. I worked at a Vietnamese restaurant back in high school, and I had a Viet family come in to eat. They gave me snobby vibe the entire time, especially after I told them I could not speak Vietnamese. They ordered regular pho, but asked for no cilantro, so I rang the order in without a Reno cilantro. It came out with cilantro in it, and I told the kitchen what the family asked. The kitchen told me they could not do anything about it, so I told my manager, and they told me to ask the family if they still wanted it. Family said yes, so I brought it out, and they took out the cilantro and ate the entire thing. At the end of the meal they spoke to the owner and complained how I got their order completely wrong, got the food for free, and got their bill taken out of my pay. The owner told me I should have removed the cilantro myself. Shitty management, shitty customer. Fatter is illegal, you know they cannot do that. Fuck that place, I hope it closes for good. My friend works at restaurant. A vlogger was shooting a video, and since it was allowed within the place nobody troubled her. Apparently she wanted one of those gone sexual clickbait thumbnails, so she asked my friend to place his face in her breast while she squirted ketchup on herself. My friend refused as he was in a relationship, but some other employee agreed to do so. After they shot the thumbnail, she marched in the next day claiming sexual assault. I don't know what happened after that, but it did not turn out good for the liar. I hate the vlogger already, and I don't know them. I waited tables for a few years in college, and the worst table that I ever had was a Catholic priest and some guy he was trying to hit up for donations. The whole meal he was very condescending and demanding. After everything was done, I left the check at the table. He ended up walking out stiffing me, not just on the tip, but on the entire check. He even stole the leather check holder thing. I reported this to my manager. A couple weeks later, this same guy comes in with about 20 members of his congregation. My manager told him he wasn't welcome in our restaurant after walking out on his previous tab in front of his whole party. They all ended up leaving to go elsewhere. Best manager I've ever had. Guess he never heard of the commandment thou shalt not dine and dash. This old guy who asked if I was included in the order. I'm 17. This happened to me when I was about that age. Some guy asked if I was on the dessert menu. I pretended so hard not to understand him that he actually got embarrassed, left a generous tip, and politely left without another word.